David Cappella, Professor Emeritus of English and the 2017-2018 Poet in Residence at Central Connecticut State University, has co-authored two widely used textbooks, Teaching the Art of Poetry, The Moves, and A Surge of Language, Teaching Poetry Day to Day. His poems and essays have appeared in various literary journals and anthologies in the U.S. and Europe.
Thank you, Gil. It's great to see everybody, see some old friends and enemies. No. This book took 15 years to get published, and I've read from it frequently now that it's been published. The bilingual Italian edition came out before this did. COVID had a little bit to do with it, but also the publisher, the editor and publisher of Servina Bava Press was under the gun with a lot of other things, and she fell behind. So I'm just happy that it's out here. I've been reading from it, and you're going to hear from it. It's interesting poetry because it's loosely based on the life of an Italian poet that no one knows in the United States, Giacomo Leopardi. And the Italian word for hunchback is gobbo, and that's the name I used in the title. Leopardi is as well known as Dante in Italy. He's quoted frequently. He's probably a premier lyric poet in the world. What was interesting about him is he knew 11 languages and he spoke 9, including English. He was a philologist, started studying at an early age, wrote a very, very famous scientific essay when he was 15 years old that was known all over Europe. His mother wanted him to become a priest, and he didn't want to. And at about the age of 10 or 11, he started to develop physical problems, and he had a ganglia on his chest, and he became a hunchback. And in Italy, if you don't cut una bella figura, you're not treated very well. People used to call him horrible names, including gobbo. They used to rub his back for good luck. They treated him like a rabbit's foot. That shows up in the poem. So I wrote this 100 sonnets. I didn't rhyme the sonnets because I'd still be writing them if I did. But I wanted to try to walk the line between being modern, sounding modern, but sounding archaic and ancient, because he knew ancient Greek. He spoke classical Greek, as well as modern Greek, as well as Latin. I mean, the guy was pretty cool. His father was the last of the aristocracy in Italy. And if you can think, if you've ever saw Burt Lancaster in The Leopard, Monaldo was his father, and he had a library of 21,000 books, the largest library, private library in Europe at the time. So Leopardi had all of these books to read. And he wanted to fall in love, of course. And he became a very serious person whose attitude toward human nature is very dark, but he wasn't gloomy, if you know what I mean. He believed in seeing the truth and getting at it. And so I tried to do that in the poetry, okay? So any references in the book, in the sonnets, you should be able to understand. It's in 3 acts, like a natural opera. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. I'll read a couple from each act if I have time. I'll do at least one from each act. And I've sent a couple of letters out to opera composers. And I haven't heard back yet, but I was encouraged to do that because I wrote these sonnets as though they were arias. And Charlie's colleague, Brian, put 2 of them to art music. And they were performed here at a concert, and it was wonderful. So I'm hoping that maybe something would happen about that. Another person has encouraged me to try to make this a one-act, one-person performance, single-person performance. I don't know. That all sounds good, but you know, I'm a retired geezer. I'm a nobody, so I don't think they're going to jump down the throat here to get me to do this. So this is Act 1, and this is about Leopardi. No, I must say, this isn't Leopardi, and this isn't me, okay? It's both of us plus my imagination, okay? Madame Bovary, c'est moi. You know, that's pretty much what this is. It's a conflation of ideas into a voice. So this is 1. Garbo remembers his youth. Let me tell you about suffering, because I was a boy cold without love, in a large house so dark it stifled laughs. I would run to my mother with stones, only to drop them under a grim gaze so harsh I felt tossed in a freezing bath. Her words, like a cicada's shrill chirp, pierced the close air of long summer afternoons. I remember my brother's folded hands in the coffin, how I kissed one knuckle. I cried, torched inside with processional fires held by shadowed monks, cowled in their black walk through my town's narrow streets, terrifying my heart forever. And I'll just read a second one in the interest of time. This is number 5. If I can open the page. Garbo regarding his years of study. The library was a monastery, its books a deathless sanctuary. As a closeted monk thirsts for heaven, I drank words, and beside dying candles, I knelt shivering in the cold, my eyes aching. I came to discover beauty. I wrote poems, whispering words to the sky. I heard the angelic voices of youths singing Amore. Truly, I was happy. Yet during these long years with books, I died. My spine wrinkled up, and I couldn't run with my brother. A girl called me crooked. Invisible, the cathedral of my inner beauty. Rage crawled like a rodent in my mind. Act 2. Things are moving along here, and his career is growing. And this is Sonnet 61. Garbo ponders his seclusion even among friends. Sick, a toothache seared every thought. Fearing dentists, I sat in my room with pain, a loquacious visitor. 2 constant companions sharply complained. My eyes. Their worsening predicament soured my mood. I could walk the streets only at night. When real friends stopped by, I pouted. Without money or food, I retreated into myself. My heartache imploded. I refused all invitations, all calls. I forfeited my pleasures, festivals, girandole spinning, horses racing in the streets. I wandered isolated, shrunken, a spiritual emigre. '65. Garbo endures his suffering and creates more. I was the great deformed one who lacks faith. I was the great nameless homunculus. I was the great wingless crumpled cherub. What did you call me? Mollusk? Insect? Scab? I endured such torments. This torture burned like seasoned logs. Its bitter heat stung my thoughts, prickled my whole being. Its smoke, morbid stench drifted down into my craw. Tell me, do you know why man lords himself over other men? The answer is joy, the malicious dog that trots alongside the bourgeois, growling at the likes of me. Do you think my work, my beliefs escaped its jaws? Aniquilare in toto. Everything is all. And annihilare means all, annihilation of everything. How's time? Okay, we're going to the third act of the opera now. Just 2 more poems. I don't want you to suffer too much here. Okay, 82 and 84, okay. This is a good follow-up to the other poem. Gobbo contemplates being Gobbo. I live in a world of physiques, of flesh, a world where one's figure reflects the man. Stature and gestures express the measured assurance of grace, strength, and endurance. Society demands il gentiluomo, gentlemen, to preen and pose with such an artful ease that good fortune shines from their regal stance. I was not built with confidence and style. Fate mixed weakened mortar to construct me. To all eyes I am odious, scoffed at, taunted. Even my friends call me Gobbo. My hunched back and bulging chest, they rubbed for luck at cards. I'm a rabbit's foot, a buffoon. No one believes me a man. That's a good one. Well, I remember trying to write that. 84. Gobbo remarks on the lost love of his life. He loved this countess, and she had children, and he went to a party. It was just so sad. I mean, he just sat there, and she ignored him after inviting him. It was quite difficult to read about that and to think about it. Gobbo remarks on the lost love of his life. I loved her. She remained oblivious. She sat and teased her children as they played at her feet, indifferent to my size. The scent from the bouquet of fresh flowers grabbed her attention more than my presence. I sat silently studying her face. She never heard my passionate music, the fiery symphony of my heart. I love, and I am not loved in return. Love without love returned, if it prevails, prevails through art, my art. One quiet poem I wrote acquitted me from loving her, released a smile in me at her specter. She was a phantom. Phantoms do not love. I'll end with that. Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Questions for our office?
The questions just keep on coming.
David, did it make you so sad to write?
Yeah, I didn't cry at that last one, which I usually cry at.
I'm dying here.
Yeah, you should read the whole damn thing.
I had to cheer up a little.
Yeah, it's gotten, some people in Italy had some very, very nice things to say about my poetry. Yeah, Mary?
What was it like to write not about your life and your world with your personal first-person eye, but through this other artist? You're reflecting on your own life.
I am reflecting on my own life.
So talk about that, where it's you know, a lot of poets, it's always about their life, and they're always in their own eye.
My life is embedded in that.
Yeah.
My experiences are embedded in that. especially his relationship with his father.
Did you like being removed, though? Like you're looking in his life and your
It
life?
allowed me to write
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's much different. I'm trying to write the memoir, and I'm dealing with things in a whole different way than I dealt with in there, and it's much more difficult. I used words to separate myself. I mean, that thing about love, I mean, I wish I could have said that to some people when I was 15 years old, but I couldn't, you know.
So you have his writing in terms of his poetry, but you also have journals. Is that like you mentioned? Like you were reading about, you know, his experience at the party. So did he leave a legacy of?
He did. He left a gigantic journal called Zibaldone. It's gigantic. I have it. There was a conference at Trinity where all the major translators in the world were at, and they translated this, and they've got all the notes and everything, and I read from that all the time. It's like trying to read the Bible or having the Torah there. You just look at it every day. You read a journal entry or something. Fascinating man, and I really identify with him. You know, I probably would have been scared to death of him. I mean, if he got, it's funny, he would whistle if you said something that he didn't think was intelligent. I mean, he was just the strangest guy, but he was also brilliant. I mean, this is what happens.
Did you know you wanted to write this collection before reading the journal, or was it the
No,
journal?
I read Iris Arrigo's biography of Leopardi,
Okay.
and that triggered a voice. And I started writing in 2000, and I finished writing the sonnets in 2005. And I had started showing them to people and friends. And then I put them into this contest, and I won the contest with the first 26 of them out of 750 manuscripts. And then like a fool, I didn't send the whole thing in for the follow-up contest. Gil.
So, when you first started this, of course, you weren't a geezer, okay? To use your own word, right? Now, how has...
I don't like you anymore, Gil. I used to like you, but you just changed.
I'm just, you know... Anyway, but now, so how has your relationship to the words changed over the time, you know?
I can't believe I wrote it. I look at it and I say, you know, where did this come from? I love reading it, and my friends are just reading the book. I just had an email the other day from a friend of mine in Colorado and said, Dave, this is really, you know, I'm really enjoying this. I'm reading this again. So, I mean, I do read it, but I sort of memorized almost most of it now. So, but the words, I sometimes I wonder, where did that come from? How did I put those images together? You know, because I worked really, really, really hard at it. You know, I can remember the hours of trying to sound, and I had 4 writers. I had Leslie Ravi, Steve, and she just retired, Jerry Radici. And so they were reading it. So they got me, they helped me at the beginning. Well, I was working toward the end of it when we were all in a poetry group together.
How old was Gabo when he died?
37. He died he was born in 1798. He died in, I believe, 1836. And he never got to meet he was trying to meet Byron and Shelley in Pisa, and they missed connections because his father delayed him from traveling. He wasn't allowed to leave home till he was 21. He tried to sneak away twice, and his father caught him. And then his mother never forgave him. She never forgave him. I'll just read the last one, okay? Do I have time? And then Molly's turn. But this is, the last poem in here is he became, after his death, became famous. People went to Palazzo Leopardi in Recanati, Italy, to see the house where he lived and to see the study. And his mother's still living there. okay? So this last one is in the room where Gobbo was born, his mother speaks. The father speaks in this, and the mother speaks. This is I believe, the only time she speaks. He'd been dead for years. Then the pilgrims arised, those sorry fools, to lionize him and his work. Aye, he wasted his talents. Do you suppose God thought him virtuous? God watches us. He watched my son ignore him. To know this freezes my aching heart. A stranger walked in, stared at a painting of my son, and told me that I was blessed to have mothered him. I stiffened and froze. I did not move my head. Only my eyes raised up toward the ceiling to him who knows the words I whisper in prayer each day, the words I'll whisper until my death, the words I whisper now, forgive my son. Yeah, and she was a toughie. Adelaide. You didn't want to mess with her. She was a real Italian. Thank you very much, gang, for putting up with it. I appreciate it. I got time for. All right. Questions?
So how much of his language do you work into your?
I don't.
Okay.
I can't. He's too smart for me. Really. The person who did do this, and I brought the book. It should. Yes, that's the bilingual edition. Is Angela D'Ambra. She, and even in the right one, people in Italy, several of my friends picked up, she used in her translation some archaic words, beautiful words that you don't hear every day, but yet Italians can recognize. And that she did it. Her translation is brilliant from what I can get from it, but from what people have told me. So I couldn't do that in English. Once in a while I could use it, but I referred to his poetry. I alluded to some of his famous poems, his lyrical poems.
So talk a little bit about that process of working with a translator.
Okay, Angela, she's classically trained from the University of Florence. And I never met her until I went over for 3 months last year when the book was coming out to do a Zoom and everything. And she was instrumental in getting a number of these published in Italian poetry journals. So that helped. And she was always questioning me. She would say, what were you feeling when you said this? What's the feeling behind this? And I'd be sitting at the computer in, Farmington, Connecticut, going, I'd write these long things to her. This is what I was feeling. Then she wanted to know particular words that she didn't know in English. And for instance, something about a lake. I mentioned, I don't know if lake or well or something. It was always it was always a noun. And she wanted to fool around with the noun that she was going to use to capture the image. So she wanted to know the images that I was using and why was I using them? What was the basis for that? Like sanctuary and monastery for being in his study. Because he did, it was like his retreat. So that image came kind of naturally to me. And the monks walking around town. Recanati's quite a place. It's on the Adriatic, and it's in the Marche region. So from his house, you could look in the back from the palazzo, you could look back and see the mountains, and then look out down the hill to see the Adriatic. So he had this expanse. Italy the land is shaped like that on that side in the Marche region. And there's actually the place where he wrote that famous poem Infinity, where he's looking at the horizon and it drops off. And he wrote this very famous poem called L'Infinito, which if I had courage I could recite it, but I can't. can't remember it.
Did she, the translator that is, did she, what is it that attracted her to the poems? And
She loves Leopardi, and she loved Leopardi. She read my poems, and she said, these are beautiful, and I want to get them into Italian. That's just what she said. And this cover is by Brita. I can't remember Brita's last name now. Winkels. She's a German artist who resides in Italy and studied in Italy, and this is her painting of Leopardi. And I bought this. I've got the painting, but I said I want this for the cover. And I stumbled on it accidentally on the internet, and I called her up because I put in a price and the gallery wouldn't accept the price. And I said, Brita, you know, I love Leopardi. This is a beautiful painting. I want to own it. And after I talked to her, she said, I can't really do much, and I don't get all the money. I only get 60%. So I went back. I think I offered $800. Then I went up to $1,200, and they took it. So I paid $1,200 for the painting. It's a beautiful painting. And when you look at it, she does the red eye and the blue eye there, and she puts the painting is much larger. She puts him down in the corner, and that's how he felt in the world. But his philosophy of human nature is really something. He's not delusional about what hope means for people and how they use hope. And he's a very spiritual poet in a lot of ways. For someone that didn't want to be a priest, he still had that spirit in him. Very few, if you read his poetry, even in translation, you see that he's different than other people. He goes deep, as they say. Okay. One more, yeah, sure.
One more question. If he showed up here today, what do you think how would he react to the Gobbo, your Gobbo on the page?
I'd like to think he'd smile. I really would. He had this beautiful smile. That's why I said that. I think he would have wondered why I spend so much attention on him. I really think he might have said that. But then I hope he would have taken me out for a Negroni or something after that. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for listening. I always appreciate that.